Hi everyone, this is Alyssa from CRAC. Thanks for joining our first community call of the new year. We're just going to give folks a couple more minutes to hop on the line and then we'll get started shortly. Hey everyone, for folks who've just joined, we're just going to give folks another minute to hop on the line and then we'll get started. If you're having any technical difficulties, go ahead and chat at CRAC in the chat function of the GoToWebinar control panel and we'll try to help you out. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, welcome to our first community call of 2020. This community call will be focused on preparing for the 2020 census, which I know a lot of folks on the line, if not all, are working on. We are going to just go ahead and dive right in so we can maximize our time. So on the line, sorry for the sirens in the back, we have Katrina, who is our Director of National Policy. Myself, Alyssa, who is, I'm our Field Manager here at CRAC. I'm also joined by Gina, who is our new Field Associate. She just transitioned this week, so please welcome her to our team. And Kelsey, who is our Operations Manager, who is helping out with technical assistance. So if you need some help, go ahead and chat us in the GoToWebinar control panel. Great. So in terms of logistics, just a few housekeeping rules. Reminder that all attendees are placed on mute so we don't get any distracting background noise. If you want to ask questions or make comments, you have to be logged into the webinar. And feel free to shoot those to us in the chat or the questions function of the webinar panel throughout the community call. We'll take most of those at the end. So there will be a whole section dedicated to taking questions. And in the handout section of the control panel, you can also find a copy of this presentation. Great. So now we just want to get a sense of who's on the line. So we always ask this of our attendees. How many CRAC community calls have you attended in the past? So if it's your first time, anywhere to your fifth time, let us know. And we'll give folks a minute or so to get in those answers. All right, 10 more seconds or so. Great, let's see what we got. Okay, wow, so over a third, it's your first community call, so welcome. I'm happy to have you in the new year and excited that you're on our census call since it's a huge part of this year. And then another 36%, this is your fourth or fifth call or more, so thanks for sticking with us. And then we have a couple folks who have attended one or two. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. I know everyone's super busy and just kind of getting back into the new year, but we appreciate everyone taking the time. So next, we always like to gauge where everyone is joining us from today. So our next poll is, where are you joining us from. Your options will be West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, South, or other. And we'll give folks another minute or so to get those answers in. All right, another 10 seconds or so. Great, let's see who we have. Awesome, so it looks like we have representation from almost everywhere, at least in the continental United States. So East Coast, 21%, West Coast, almost a third, so thanks for joining us at your lunch break. Midwest, a good chunk, 43%, and then also some Southern representation. So we always like to see that. Great. And then last intro poll call, also going along the lines of who's on the line. I wanted to know what capacity folks are joining us from today. So choices, and you can pick any or all, community-based organization staff, national organization staff, maybe you're a community advocate and or organizer, not necessarily a staff, any students we might have on the line, or other. Let's say, so another minute or so. Great, let's see who we have. Awesome, so 62% of you all identify as community advocates and or organizers. Awesome to have you here. And then we have 46% CBO staff. So thanks again for taking the time out. Good representation from national orgs as well, so almost a quarter. Also good to have student representation. Hopefully you are not skipping class for this, but it would be a good use of your time if you are. And other, would love to know how you identify so we can be more inclusive for our future calls. So let us know, feel free to chat us or email afterwards. Great, thanks for letting us know who's on the line. So now I'll just dive right into the agenda of what we'll cover today. So we'll kick it off with a few national updates regarding census, and then we'll dive into the 2020 census timeline so that we're all on the same page as to what to expect and what we can communicate to our community members. And then a big chunk of time will be spent launching our CRAC census website, which we're super excited about. It's been one of those projects that we've been waiting to kind of perfect and deliver to the community, and so hopefully you all find it useful. And then we'll end with action items you all can participate in as we enter heavy season for the census. And then again, we'll leave time for Q&A at the end. Great, so I will now transition it to Katrina for national census updates.
Great, thank you so much, Alyssa. So if folks recall, during the end of last year, there was a big discussion around appropriations, including ensuring that funding for census was not interrupted. So if folks were following the news last month, legislation to fund much of the federal government for the remainder of fiscal year 2020, including close to $8 billion for the Census Bureau overall, was passed, and it was signed into law on December 20th. This funding is really important because it actually allows the Census Bureau to safeguard against any potential threats to an undercount to communities, such as challenges such as cyber security attacks, IT failures, and natural disasters, which we know cannot be controlled. This level is about $1.4 billion more than what was originally requested by the White House earlier in 2019. So it really gives the Census Bureau all the resources they need to fully fund the 2020 operations, in addition to contingency funds that were not used in the prior fiscal year. The next update is around a resolution that was passed in the Senate. So we want to thank Senators Schatz of Hawaii and Senator Murkowski of Alaska for leading a bipartisan resolution recognizing the importance of the 2020 census. It unanimously passed out of the Senate also in December. This resolution was supported by CRAC because of its significance in encouraging all communities to get counted. And in particular, we all know that the Southeast Asian community has unique challenges in the past to being visible, thus leading to less investment in programs and services to help them thrive. The Senate now looks to the House to quickly pass the bipartisan resolution to ensure that the Congress speaks in a single, nonpartisan voice, reassuring all people that completing the 2020 census is both safe and critical. If you're interested in supporting this effort by the Senate, we encourage folks to consider calling your Congress person or representative by calling the phone number listed on the PowerPoint and urging them or reminding them that it's really important to support this resolution, recognizing the importance of the 2020 census. I'll now transition it back to Alyssa.
Great, thanks, Katrina. So next, I wanted to cover the 2020 census timeline, but first wanted to gauge what folks know already. So wanted to see if folks know when can community members expect to begin receiving instructions to fill out the census. So is it next month, February? Is it March, April, or not until June? So let us know what you think. We'll give folks a minute or so. We'll give folks another 10 seconds. Great, let's see what folks think. Okay, so there's kind of an even split almost. So we have even number of folks who think February, even number of folks who think April, and then March just a little bit behind. So unless you live in Alaska, which has already started enumeration, most households will be receiving invitations to fill with instructions on how to fill out the census in March. Information in terms of what this timeline looks like obviously can be sent out earlier, but those invitations and postcard reminders from the Census Bureau will be starting in March. Great. So next wanted to see if folks know when is Census Day 2020. So your choices are March 1st, April 1st, April 15th, or April 30th. So let us know what you think. We'll give folks another minute. All right, we'll give folks another 10 seconds. Great, let's see what we've got. Okay, so we're divided between either April Fool's Day, which 4/5 of you think, or Tax Day, which about 20% of folks think. So the correct answer is actually April 1st, 2020. So that's the day when we're really encouraging and doing a community push to make sure that everyone has gotten counted. Since those instructions and postcard reminders will be sent out in March, we're pushing for April 1st to be a day that the community can rally around as National Census Day. Great. So now we'll go into a more in-depth timeline of what folks can expect. So as I mentioned, in this month, enumeration kicked off in remote Alaska, and so they're actually doing that as we speak, probably. In a couple months, so in March, the Census Bureau will begin mailing materials with instructions on how folks can respond online or via telephone. And then they'll send series of reminder letters, postcards, and paper forms to households that have not responded in March as well. And again, April 1st is a big day we're all rallying around, and it is official Census Day. Throughout the rest of April, the Census Bureau will continue to send out reminders and postcards to folks who have not responded yet. And also in April, enumerators will begin to visit those households who have not yet responded. So that is why we're really pushing for folks to get counted by April 1st, especially in the Southeast Asian American community. We don't want folks to feel scared or afraid that an enumerator will be coming. So to kind of avoid all that, we're really encouraging folks to get counted by self-responding. May through July, we want to uplift that the online form and the census questionnaire assistance lines are still available for people to respond. So if you don't get counted in April, just wanting to let you all know and to let your community members know that you can still reply by July 31st. And then all the way in December, so the end of this year, which seems like a long time is away now, but wanting to make sure folks are getting counted by the end of the summer, state population totals are due to the president for apportionment purposes. So that is how 2020 kind of rounds out in terms of the census. Great, and so now I will transition to CRAC Census website, which is a big reason we're holding this call today and a big chunk of my personal capacity for the past couple months. So if you want to check it out on your own computer, you can go to crac.org/SEAs count. And what it is, or what we hope it will be used for, is a hub for Southeast Asian American specific 2020 census info, data, and resources. So there are a lot of existing sites made by our partners, which are really, really great. And we have some of those resources linked, but we did want to uplift some specific data and resources made for the Southeast Asian American community specifically. So what you'll find here is Census 101 info, hard to count data, social media shareables, and resources both in English and in Southeast Asian languages. And who it's for is for folks like you on the call. So anyone from a census ambassador, so a community advocate or organizer who may not be part of an organization, as well as organizations who are looking to get their community members and local networks to be counted. So anyone really looking to help get out the count in 2020. And just an overview before we go into the site itself. You'll find general info about what the census is and some details on its impact or potential impact on the Southeast Asian American community. We'll have hard to count Southeast Asian American data, as well as some maps and data that we'll go over when I go into the site, and uplifting our partners who we're working with on census specifically as well. Resources like I mentioned, you'll find FAQs, fact sheets, in-language fact sheets, and social media shareables, and all of our links regarding pledging to be counted and signing up to be one of our census ambassadors can be found there too. So now we will transition into showing you the site. So if you haven't already pulled it up on your own browser, I'm going to go over it on my own computer. So when you get to this site, this is the landing page. This design was actually created by one of our leadership and advocacy training participants, Tien, who was a 2019 alum. So I know a couple of you on the call were in that cohort. So shout out to your fellow LAT alum for this great design. We have our Census Day countdown. So if you ever forget when Census Day is, you can always check here for how many days, hours, and minutes are there until then. We have latest news here and a direct link to some of these resources that we feel would be in high demand. And then some social media feeds. So what are folks saying about the 2020 census on Instagram and Twitter? So we can also find just general census info featuring some of our lovely staff, past and present, who have shared why they want to be counted in the 2020 census. So you can find some general overview of what it is, and specifically for the Southeast Asian American community, what factors make it difficult or might be barriers for Southeast Asian Americans to participate. We also go into why the census matters, and we featured a video by APIA Vote, which actually features Gina, as you can see here, who is on the call with us, as well as our previous intern, Anne, as well. And you can see we tried to make it so that this website is filling the niche of Southeast Asian American specific impact, since there are so many other resources out there. Under hard-to-count SEAs, you can find how we defined hard-to-count population based on census data, as well as links to hard-to-count data of the Southeast Asian American population in the aggregate, as well as a county-level breakdown if you're interested, and that is based on 2010 numbers. We also have some graphics that show you the impact of on the Southeast Asian American community and the numbers that we found and what that means. We also have a great tool and resource for folks in states where we're working with our partners at local organizations to help get out the count. So we have partners in the following states here. And if you are in one of those states, you can find state spotlights. So we explored how many SEAs were found to live in hard-to-count tracts based on the 2010 census. And we also uplifted the top 5 counties in the state by Southeast Asian American population. We also broke it down into how many or where those Southeast Asians in the state live, who are living in hard-to-count tracts are. So we created these kind of heat maps to know where folks can focus their get out the count efforts. And these maps are all available for download as well. At the bottom, you can find out links to our pledge form, our Census Ambassador sign-up form, as well as links to our partners who we are working with, who are doing get out the count work for the SEA community in that state. And if your organization, if you're on the line and you're also doing work in one of these states to get out the SEA count, feel free to reach out to me and I can totally add you on this list if you're available to be a resource to interested community members. So that is state spotlights, and you can find a list of our partners down here as well if you're interested to find out a little bit more about them. And if you don't see your state here, we just wanted to focus our capacity initially on those states, but if you want to submit a request, we are happy to accommodate if there's large demand. Under Get Informed is where you can find FAQs. So these are some of the general questions that we had answers to. So for example, we can look at, will there be a citizenship question? That's a big question that had come up in previous community calls. And so that's an example of something you can find here. For some of these questions, we also linked fact sheets that we made on them or fact sheets that our partners have made. We also have a link to our blog, which includes blogs and press releases related to census that you can check out. And also, lastly, we have our Get Involved tab. So for folks interested in taking action, we have channels and avenues that you can engage with us for census work. So again, our Southeast Asian American Get Out the Count pledge, our CRAG Census Ambassador sign up, and a link to our resources as well. So now I'll go over the resources since I think that'll be a big pull for those on the call. So we separated this into Get Educated. So these are fact sheets both in English and in Southeast Asian languages. We also linked our April 2019 community call, which was focused on the census in case folks want to review that. And getting out the SEA count, we have our social media shareables that you can browse and download and share on your own platforms, as well as Southeast Asian American hard-to-count data and maps. So links to those spreadsheets again, as well as maps of each state spotlight, as well as by ethnicities. Just to highlight the in-language fact sheets, which I think a lot of, hopefully you find helpful. So we have them available in 5 Southeast Asian languages. And so here I worked to curate lists of resources that were translated in these languages, not just by CRAG, but also by our partners like Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC, as well as the Census Bureau themselves. So this list is ever growing, so if you know a resource or you have a resource you're willing to share, we're so open to adding on to this and just want to make sure that it's as robust as possible. So we welcome any and all contributions. Under each ethnicity, I included those kind of heat maps for that ethnic population that we created based on the 2010 data as well. The only group that won't have a map, unfortunately, is the EMEN community. And so that is just another plug to get out the count in 2020 and to make sure folks write in their ethnicities, since we know that other Asian doesn't encompass our communities. So that is just a brief overview of our website. Welcome any questions, feedback, both on this call and afterwards from all of you, since you're the ones who are going to be using it. But for now, I will transition back to our presentation. So next, I wanted to go over what elements of our census website do you think will be most helpful to getting out the count? So this is hoping to gauge what you all think so we know where we should devote our capacity next. So we'll give you a minute or so to let us know what you think. We'll give folks 10 seconds more or so. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, so you all want it all. So looks like hard to count data and maps and FAQs and fact sheets are the most popular, but they're not too much ahead of translated resources and social media shareables. So again, like I mentioned, any and all feedback that you might have as you use it and kind of navigate it on your own, totally open to it. Feel free to reach out to me directly. And if you see something that is not on our site that you think should be added, I totally want to hear that feedback. So this is a website for you all to use, so we want to make it as helpful as possible. Great. So now I'll transition into what we can do to take action for the census and what you all can do as well. So getting involved with getting out the SEA count. So some of those things you saw on our website. So pledging to be counted, signing up to be a CRAC Census Ambassador. And so what that entails is, you know, sometimes we'll have these requests or we're making social media graphics and we want input as to what would be helpful. For example, what would be helpful on the website. So you all are kind of a mini focus group, as well as folks on the ground who know what the community is asking for that we can kind of use as our our local networks. We also encourage everyone to just stay informed, attending our monthly community calls, signing up for our listserv, and using the website that we worked on. And then getting a little bit more into the Census Ambassador Network, the link to sign up is there. But we have stickers, we have a couple of totes we can distribute to you to share with your networks. Again, you can request resources to educate and train your community. You can give input on CRAC census materials, like I mentioned, and we're hoping we can connect you with our partners as well as other ambassadors to really build out a national network of folks working on getting out the count. And you'll obviously be a part of our 2020 census listserv. And lastly, we wanted to uplift that the U.S. Census Bureau is still hiring up to 500,000 census takers and enumerators. So we always talk about, you know, enumeration and how that'll start and how that might make folks fearful. But if more enumerators look like our community members, we want to make sure that there is that trust and there are folks who look like us in those positions. So there is preference for bilingual job job applicants, part-time jobs with flexible hours, and it'll help you get your own community counted. So if you're interested, we put the link there. We encourage folks to check it out. I think it's a great way to get involved and make it work with your schedule as well. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. So I will now open it up for any questions from the audience. You can share verbally by raising your hand, and then we'll unmute you, or you can chat us in either the chat or the questions function. So we'll give folks a few minutes to kind of get some of those questions in, and then we'll see what we have. All right, I'm going to have Gina read out some of the questions you received, and then we'll see, hopefully we can answer all of them.
All right, so someone asked about what the source is for the hard to count maps that we had on our website. What is the source of that data that we pulled?
Yeah, so that data is pulled from the City University of New York. They did an analysis of census back from 2010, folks that mailed in their census form. And then based on that data, they were able to identify areas around the country where the mail return rates were low. And that's how we defined a hard to count tract. So if folks want a more sort of detailed breakdown of that data, I believe we have the detailed spreadsheets included in the microsite, so that if you have like an area in the country that might not have been explicitly highlighted in our microsite, you would be able to find it within the spreadsheet to find out if it was an area that was identified as hard to count in 2010.
Yeah, and as far as the funding data that are included in the state spotlights, I'm going to see if I can share my screen to show you all what I'm talking about. Great. So state spotlights, let's say I'm from California. This number here about federal funding, that's pulled from George Washington University's Institute for Public Policy's report. So you can see a breakdown of how they got those numbers, and generally it's through 55 federal funded programs. So you can see more in detail if you're interested in the breakdown of those funds. So you can even see, for example, how much goes to CHIP for your state. If you wanted to use that information, if that's something that might resonate more with your community, feel free to kind of delve a little deeper in that way. Next question.
So we have another question about the state representation on our website. Someone asked, why was their state not reflected, and why we chose the states to highlight that we did?
Yeah, great question. So definitely would love to highlight every state as much as possible. In terms of how these states were selected, we did an analysis of the Southeast Asian American population hard to count data that we had pulled all these numbers and maps from. And we looked at where there was both high population and percentage of Southeast Asian Americans living in hard to count tracts. But not only that, but where we had partners as well who were strong enough to be able to take on this work, or who had the capacity to participate in the census work. So that's how we got these 6 states to begin with. But we do want to add on states if there is demand for certain states. Definitely want to hear your requests, so feel free to submit them here, and that email will go directly to me, and then from there we can see where there's high demand and how we can add on in the most strategic way. but definitely hoping to add on as many as possible. If possible, would love to get all 50, but capacity is limited, as you all know, so just crossing our fingers, but let us know what you think. I think we have another question.
Yeah, we have one question. Someone said, I've applied to the census jobs for part-time work, but I haven't heard back. Do you know when when they actually start hiring? So we looked on the census.gov website. It looks like the application and the online assessment goes until February 20th. And then from March to April, that's when they conduct phone interviews, fingerprinting, and background checks. It looks like April 20th is when the actual orientation starts, which includes also like the training that would go into getting folks caught up to speed. And then April to July is the non-response follow-up or enumeration. But for more information, we do encourage folks to check out the census.gov website, but that is the schedule that they share on the website.
Great, good question. Any other questions?
Okay, someone asked, what about county level hard to count data and where they can find data on how many folks are hard to count in their specific county?
Great question. So this is definitely how we want to help you use this website to really maximize it. So if you go to resources, you can find hard to count data by county here, which is downloadable. So you can get those numbers of your state from the 2020 census. It really breaks it down so you can see even not just numbers-wise, but percentage-wise by county, how many folks who identified as Southeast Asian are living in hard to count tracts. So it's right here on the resources page for you. All right, any other questions? We'll give folks a couple more minutes to get those in before we wrap up.
We have another question that came in. Someone's asking, are we anticipating adding on any additional resources in the coming weeks? And if so, what do those resources look like?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, this is kind of a living website. So as new resources roll out, we definitely want to add those that are relevant to the Southeast Asian American community on here. So anything to do with translated questionnaires, as much guidance around that, we definitely want to add on. Those state spotlights, depending on the demand that we receive, seeing if we can create more of those, especially since that was one of the top categories in the poll that we conducted. But we also want to hear from you all. So if there's something that we're not seeing or something that's not being added or something that you see on your own, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. We want to make sure that the folks who are using the website can actually, get a good use out of it. So it's an open channel of communication if you want to kind of suggest or recommend any resources, including some that you may have made on your own in your organization. All right. I'll give folks another minute to get in any last questions, but then we'll start to wrap up and let folks be on their way. Okay, well, seeing none, and you all can always reach out afterwards. We'll just go ahead and wrap up for today's call. So just wanted to thank everyone again. We know everyone's super busy, so we appreciate everyone who does join our community calls, especially live. And wanted to just give folks a save the date for our next one in February, which will be on the 27th, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, and the registration link will be coming soon, so just keep an eye out. If you have any questions about census or general field, feel free to reach out to me at alyssa@crac.org. or anything about national policy updates, you can reach out to Katrina at katrina@crac.org. But other than that, thank you again for joining our first call of the new year. Hopefully we are able to see some of you on the next call. Have a good day, everyone.